Hi there, this is Pablo, and in this video I'm going to explain the basics of how to bring configuration data to your Salto environment. Data support is useful when you want to manage configuration data in Salto. In Salesforce, you typically have two types of data. You have your configuration data and you have your normal data. So what are the differences? Well, normal data, as I call it, is just data about your customers. You have your accounts, your contacts, your opportunities, your leads, etc. That is your standard CRM data. Then you have configuration data, which could be something like products, maybe custom objects that define custom pricing, or maybe even a custom object that defines lead assignment rules or case assignment rules. This is data that actually defines how your org behaves. And so in that sense, it is data that allows you to configure your org. It's not data about your customers. So we can manage configuration data in Salto, and we can do everything that we would normally be able to do with metadata. We can version it, we can do impact analysis, we can deploy it across environments. So in this demo, I'm going to show you how to get your product data into Salto. Let's start by adding a brand new environment. I click here, create environment, connect an app. We're going to choose Salesforce, OAuth, and I'm going to connect to my sandbox. Okay, now I'm logged in, but I'm not going to run a fetch yet. First, I'm going to configure the settings to allow for data support and bring products down. So I'm going to click here on settings, then click on edit next to Salesforce, and click edit one more time. If you've never seen this screen, I highly recommend that you watch our video on configuring Salesforce for Salto, which you can find in that description below. So essentially, this is where we control what metadata is downloaded to Salto. So here we have what we include, which is by default everything, and what we exclude. Again, this is explaining more detail in the video that is in the description. So to bring products, what I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse this metadata object here, and I'm going to paste a new object below called data. Now this looks a little weird, but it's actually not too different from the metadata object above. Basically what we're doing here is we're saying which objects we want to retrieve their data from. So we're no longer talking about metadata, we're talking about the actual data, the actual records of the product object. So here we could specify multiple objects if we wanted, separated by a comma, and we need to use the object API name, in this case product2. So that is the first step. Now the second step is we need to tell Salto how we want to identify the same records across different environments. And this is basically what allows us to create a connection between the same record across two different environments so that you can do comparison, deployments, and more. So to do that, we need to define what is the ID of this object, or how does Salto identify the uniqueness of this object. So for that, we have a new object here called Salto ID settings, and the next object is called default ID settings. Basically, this means that any object in the data object here is going to have a default configuration for what makes it unique. So by default, we have this special identifier here that says that all the master detail fields of the object or the record are going to generate a unique ID. Now, I know that sounds a little weird, but basically what we're saying here is that if your object has any master detail fields and the object is on the detail side of that relationship, we're going to use the IDs of all the masters, we're going to concatenate them, and we're going to generate a unique ID. After that, we're going to also use the name of the actual record. You can add more attributes here, and basically as you add more attributes, we essentially concatenate all these attributes to generate a unique ID. This will probably make a lot more sense once you see it. So for now, let's just go ahead and save the changes. Save changes again. And now we're going to fetch. Okay, so now the fetch has completed, so let's go back to Explore and let's go to the element tree. If I go here to instances, now I can see product 2, which is the actual product object. And as you can see now, I have the actual records of that object. So here I'm looking at a laptop product, and I can see all the fields, including normal fields and CPQ fields. Now, what about the unique ID that we configured earlier? If we go here to this three-dot menu and click on View NACL, we can see the actual source of this data record. And this is essentially the ID. So if you remember earlier, we said that the ID was going to be created using the name of the product along with any master detail IDs in that product. Now, because a product object is a standard object, it cannot be on the detail side of a master detail relationship. So therefore, there are not any master detail IDs. So in this case, we only use the name, but this name gives a unique identifier to Salto to say this is product laptop 13. So if we deploy this to another environment and that other environment has the same unique ID, this is how we identify that these two records are the same. And that's how easy it is to bring your data into Salto.